I want to kindly invite the keynote speaker, George Dimitrov, to present his keynote speech.
Thank you very much, and it's an utmost pleasure to be here, thanks to the Ministry of Economy and RIA, to speak about a topic that is presently, well, close to all of us. So I will try to shed some light about problems of the e-commerce, what is going on, and to see how the payments stand in this realm, new realm, and also what are the current problems that I hope will be subject to discussion in our esteemed panelists today. So I've stand before you as working as a policymaker and law drafter in different countries throughout Western Balkans, and the European Commission as well, different experts group. I've been teaching IT law for many years now, but also I'm as a private consultant. I've been advising different companies like Google, SpaceX, Microsoft, MasterCard, and different of blue chip companies. So to be honest, from my personal career, I have a quite a fair view on the development of e-commerce. But if you can see this self-speaking chart, the global trends in developing of e-commerce, the percentage, the turnover, in 2007 it was $2.3 trillion. In 2023 is expected to be $6.5 trillion as a turnover. The trend is, as I said, it's self-speaking. Why? Why it is so? Why the e-commerce, it invades more and more of the traditional commerce in this world? I will not say some new things here, the comfort of the user sitting from his chair to be able to grab something from the other part of the world without borders. It works 24/7. What does it mean, national sales? What does it mean to buy goods from the mall? Here, the mall is the whole world, the whole market space. E-commerce boosts competition. I mean, insofar as different or similar goods can be sold on the internet, the user can easily check prices, compare quality. So it boosts the competition. For the traders, for the merchant, it's a very small cost for being online on the market. Can you imagine what it is to open a shop at the mall and what it is to open some website, e-commerce site? It's out of question. So e-commerce also comes with new realms and goods, things that were not present before technology, before internet. Let's take some goods like Facebook. Or so-called social networks. Did they bring some good to us? Or Google, search engine of Google? I even do not remember the world without Google, and I'm part of this world. I know the world before Google, but today it is part of us. Everything is in our hand, at one grasp. Even when I woke up during midnight and I touch my phone and I'm happy, I'm calm, and I fall back to sleep again calmly. So we have a saying in Bulgaria that you fall on the chair, on the ground, and you hear the crack sound. You touch and say, oh, it's a rip, it's not my phone. So it is that we are bound to the technology, and we use it every day to receive goods which are part of the e-commerce. E-commerce is not just to buy telephone from internet or from Amazon to buy a book. It is to receive goods which have different perception. They are exchanged only electronically, only digitally. So The business model of the commerce changed when the e-commerce evolved. And it is I hope you all use many services. If we take Facebook, for the end user, this service is free of charge. And you ask, how can Facebook earn money by providing free of charge service? Oh, believe me, behind Facebook, there is a different business model where different players on the market, they're ready to pay Facebook so that their goods and services can be presented before this large audience of billions of users. Or companies which now evolve on the market like Netflix, like Spotify, which provide services which are so low costs. You can pay €5 to watch whole month, to watch all the movies that are at Netflix, or to access all the music in the world in Spotify. How it comes, how it is possible. This is because the e-commerce brings through internet a huge audience, and when you take small money from big audience, the earnings are huge. So this changes the business models of making money. And to work this world, in order to work, what fuels e-commerce? There are two simple things. One of the things is the cashless payments. So how, through internet, I can pay for goods and services when they are against payment. This is first. Second problem is the legal certainty. People need to trust, to have trust, to know that if something goes wrong, the law, the government, the system for protection, which is now present as a rule of law, can protect the people. So the legal base is one of the key factors for having reliable, trustworthy, usable system of e-commerce. So let's shed two words about each of these realms, of these fuels for e-commerce. Let's speak about cashless payments. Because of e-commerce, we are now facing a realm of quickly moving from cash payments to cashless payments, because only they can serve the e-commerce. Only they can serve. And there are so many things that appeared in life during the past 5 to 10 years, and they're appearing new models, new instruments for cashless payments. For example, mobile banking and web banking for traditional transfer, which is now a reality. We have it in our phones. You can access from web. The payment cards, especially the virtual payment cards, are now boosting. The different systems for instant payments are now presently at place, so that the payment can go peer-to-peer just like that, quickly, now. Appearance of new generation of banks called neobanks, like Revolut, like N26, they really changed the scope of competition in the traditional banking sector, which drive banks to evolve as well. Appeared new type of service providers like PSD2 providers, which create alternative instrument to operate with your with the accounts within different banks, so you can have them all in one wallet. Appeared new type of instruments like e-wallets, which linked different payment cards, and you can pay nowadays completely cashless, like PayPal, like TransferWise. Also, another realm is in place: mobile wallets. Mobile wallets, they load money in your wallet via different technologies, different instruments, and you can use them like Paytm, like PayUmoney. And also appearance of crypto money, which the society was not well prepared for them. What is crypto money? What is crypto cash? Is it a cash? Is it money at all? Or is it some abstract value that is exchanged for other goods? It's something the society is unprepared and non-regulated well. And of course, there are different SMS payments used as value-added services from mobile operator, and I can go a lot dig into this realm of cashless payments. So But let's see the global trend. New alternative payment instruments are in place, and they evolve new instruments. And second, traditional banks, they have to catch up with these trends. They have to digitally evolve. They could digitally transform so quickly so that they can face the expectation of people for cashless payments, for boosting e-commerce, and not only e-commerce, I'm speaking about e-government, e-justice, e-health, whatever e-domains are at place. So these are the global trends. I truly hope that today, during the course of the panel discussions, some of the key issues will be touched base upon. But let's say some words about the legal base. As I said, people trade, they participate in the digital life only if there is legal certainty, if there is trust that if something goes wrong, the government, the state will protect, will be there, guide as an eagle to protect rights and interests. This is what the legal base stands for. So the current realm is that although there is legal base, it is not correct to say that there is no such. No, there is legal base on a pan-European level in all the countries. Every country has a regulation of e-commerce and protection of users, also called digital transaction, status of electronic documents, of electronic signatures, etc., etc. But at the same time, we see in the financial sector kind of conservatism of the traditional regulatory bodies that deal with the financial services, like AML, anti-money laundering watchdogs, commissions, agency which keep an eye on anti-money laundering policies. Also, banking and financial authorities which overlook the fair provision of financial services on the market. They are a bit conservative when we speak about coming new opportunities and boosting e-commerce, especially when speaking about providing financial services which are very heavily regulated in Europe. So nowadays, in the focus of providing financial services completely remotely, the present financial players on the market, they faced a big legal legal problem, which is called remote onboarding. In other words, how to make a new-to-bank or new-to-financial institution customers a customer. How to remotely identify, how to make possible for him to enter into validly binding relationship, how to sign contract, declarations, PEPs, etc., and how to be delivered securely documents and digital content, especially when we're speaking about some very private content like PIN code of a payment card or things like that, how to transfer it in a secure way. The legislation is there. In Europe, we have EIDAS, which is called, stands for Regulation on Electronic Identification and Trust Services. This regulation already gave the regulation, uniform regulation throughout all Europe. All, without any exception, all Western Balkan economies have already transposed this regulation. It is the same, fairly well transposed in my opinion and my view. So they are there. It is just need to be deployed quickly to have faith in that the court will recognize the identity, will recognize the signed documents in digital form, to recognize the delivery of documents in digital form. Although these are three of the most important instruments that makes possible legal digital transformation in the financial sector, I will stand for the first one, electronic identification. So with this, I would like to finish my speech. Electronic identification, electronic identification, electronic identification. This is the key to boost the development of the cashless society, providing services, financial services by the market agent, legally, in a regulatory binding way. And I hope with this I can finish my speech. Thank you very much. And I hope we will have enjoyed the panel discussion that these esteemed panelists are here for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your speech. Now I'm very pleased to invite the session moderator, Driton Hapçiu, and panelists, Eriola Bibolli, Eugenio Marengo, Fabian Bahr, and Mergim Cahani.
Dear guests, participants, partners, friends, very happy to be here today. Delighted to moderate this distinguished set of panelists who are with me today discussing about cashless society and e-commerce. My name is Driton Hapçiu. I'm one of the co-founders and managing partners in a number of ICT companies. I have co-founded since 1992 dozens of them in the field of system integration, software development, telecommunications, digital world, as well as financial advisory firm, Recura Financials, dealing with boutique services and consultancy, mainly strategic consultancy and merger and acquisitions. What is cashless society? 100 years ago, in a small town of Prizren, just south of Kosovo, my grandfather had a small shop, a merchant shop, and he received an inquiry from Greek, Turkish, and Jewish merchants from Thessaloniki to deliver 1,000 lambs in Thessaloniki. Now you can imagine somebody having 10 lambs and getting ready to deliver 1,000 of them was not an easy thing to do. But he thought of drop shipping very early in his life, so he got together with dozens of owners of flocks and herds in the Prizren region, North Albania, North Macedonia, and via railway, which was already established in the former Ottoman Empire, he delivered 1,000 lambs to Thessaloniki for a number of years, but with no cash. Carrying cash was not an easy thing. Currencies, exchange, gold, thieves, all kinds of things. So what he did was actually providing to the owners salt, sugar, gas, olive oil, and whatever they needed in exchange for lambs. And the money or the goods he received in durs from merchants, again, Greek, Turkish, Albanian, Jew, in durs without cash. So early days of cashless society were here in the Balkans, in the Western Balkans, but we didn't know how to name them as dropshipping or cashless or even donkey commerce in a way. Well, today, challenges are, again, most or less the same, but in a different way. Cash is still there, although in a steady decline. Reports are telling us that after COVID, things have changed a lot. There is more and more cashless, more and more digital, electronic in the payments. E-commerce has boomed. And cash is, I believe, falling sharply. That is something that we will be discussing during the panel as well. With digital transformation speeding, transactions landscape is leaving the concept of cash behind, we believe. Mobile payments, e-wallets, crypto, blockchain, neobanks that were mentioned during the panel before, are some new things on the horizon, already there, already alive, and already being used. So today we will be discussing about whether we are turning towards a cashless society. Is it happening? When it will be happen? In what ways it will happen? Will there be cash still in 2030 as some people predict? Or will it be 2060? Or never? So to discuss this with me and you, today with me are distinguished panelists, Ms. Eriola Bibolli, General Manager at ProCredit Bank Kosovo. ProCredit Bank is a commercial bank with German capital, known for being pioneers in innovation in the financial industry with a clear digital approach embedded in their strategy. Amongst others, their aim is to provide advanced technological solutions to its clients and therefore have an impact towards a cashless society. Over the years, ProCredit has had an approach to definition of economic development, and this has changed from providing support through financing to taking a structured and proactive approach to sustainable development. Happy to have you today with us, Eriola. Eugenio Marengo, welcome. Eugenio works as Global Head of Processing Center at QIPU, or CHUIPU, it depends, KIPU. He has almost 20 years of experience in the card payment industry, accumulating international experience by living and working in both Latin America to Africa region. He is one of the chairmen of the Card Working Steering Committee of ProCredit Group, which helps defining the group's card strategy. Currently is based in Frankfurt, Germany, where he also lives, has been, and is always a friend of Pristina and Kosovo, so he comes very often here. QIPU is a German IT company based in Frankfurt with a president of 6 regional offices located in 3 continents, 11 different time zones, very interesting, and has been present in Kosovo since 20 years, contributed a lot to the development of this cashless society that we are discussing today. Mr. Fabian Bahr, welcome, working as for G&D, a global company HQ'd in Germany. They started as banknote printers, so they know the cash very well, some 170 years ago. They invented the SIM card. They are manufacturing payment cards as well as ID cards, so they are in your pocket today, in each of you. Fabian says freedom of consumer choice needs to be the guiding principle in payment. Both cash and electronic payments are here to stay. Happy to have you today with us, Fabian. And finally, the last, not least, Mergim, a good friend of mine, someone that most of you know from Pristina, Kosovo, Balkans. Mergim is a founder and CEO of Giraffa Incorporated, as some call it Albanian Amazon or Amazon of the Balkans. It is the fastest growing tech company in the Balkans. He founded Giraffa originally as an Albanian language search engine in 2013, and then introduced e-commerce platform in 2016, quickly becoming a major provider of e-commerce in the region. Since then, Giraffa has grown to hundreds of employees here in Albania, in North Macedonia, and it is absolutely a very innovative, customer-centric, result-driven, relentlessly high standard of employment, deployment of services, and they have an ultimate mission, and that is to build the internet economy in this region and Central Europe. They provide an ecosystem of services of e-commerce, video streaming, online marketing, cloud computing, entertainment in Kosovo, North Macedonia, and Albania. So let's start with questions. Eriola, in the last 10 years, ProCredit Bank has been introducing its so-called cashless branches, self-service 24/7 zones we've seen across the region, in Kosovo as well, are equipped with modern, innovative, multifunctional machines, allowing customers to carry out their banking activities independently in a comfortable, manless environment. So I have many questions. We heard about neobanks, we heard about cryptocurrency, we know about blockchain. Where is traditional bank today compared to these challenges in the market? So I have three questions in one. Give us some insight on how does ProCredit, like a bank like yours, see the future of cash and cashless society? What progress have you seen in your bank introducing new innovative solutions? And where do you see your bank in the future with those challenges? Please.
Greetings to everyone, and thank you very much, Driton, for the questions. I could spend perhaps the whole afternoon covering the depth of the questions you mentioned. I'm particularly excited to be in this panel for one simple fact that I feel privileged. Kosovo is hosting for the first time a regional digital summit. And it is an event that does not happen every day or every year, and it is a very important event, positioning Kosovo as a front runner in the digitalization of the economy, and we feel privileged to share part of our thoughts and contribution in these regards. Secondly, I am sitting in the middle of a very interesting mini ecosystem. I'm sitting in between two clients and our IT provider. So if the clients would have complaints or issues, I know whom to complain and publicly. So I feel particularly honored with this constellation as well. Talking about the way ProCredit sees the cashless society, before going to ProCredit, it is important, without repeating what the keynote speaker mentioned, not to say what would be the two themes that the world will continue to talk in the coming years, and inevitably it is sustainability and technology and digitalization. And these are the themes that have been already touched by this summit, and they will continue to be touched. In these regards, we know all the trends in global payments, in adaptation of new technologies and new business models. Nevertheless, I have to start the opening with a very stubborn, hard fact that globally, the persistence of cash transactions remains still very high, around 80–85%, according to the latest MasterCard reports. It is a staggering figure. No matter how much we hear everyone talking about technology, talking about innovation, talking about global digital payments and systems, cash still remains the most widespread used means of payments globally. We see quite a variation in terms of more advanced countries in Europe or United States and so on, but we see other countries that simply have stagnated and have not made steps forward. In this regard, then, where does Kosovo stand, and what does ProCredit has to say here? Kosovo, I have to admit that it is a country that has already invested a lot in technology and in the digital ecosystems, but with a very slow progress when it comes to the transformation of the society into a cashless society. And if I would mention briefly some figures, you'd be amazed, for example, based on what the latest central bank reports would have to say about the payments. And let me start with some of them. Retail payments initiated by the consumers amount around 214 million, out of which 97% happen in cash in Kosovo. While received payments from consumers, from retailers, amount in the average 23 million per annum, and 72% of the incoming received payments from citizens, consumers, are in cash. This is our reality. And it's a reality that, of course, makes you think about it. Then, what would be conceptually the preconditions from this starting point to transform Kosovo society or any society to a more cashless society, and then what we do there? First of all, citizens need accessible and reliable accounts and access to the financial system. And in this regard, again, the figures in Kosovo are not the most encouraging, because if we talk about a concept very dear to the regulators and to the banks, it is financial inclusion. And in Kosovo, for example, it is only 50 to 60% of the population that is reportedly having a bank account, while the rest of the population not yet has a bank account. And 61% of retail customers are reported not to have a bank account. So what is then, who should think and start taking action about it, starting from the government and the regulator, following the commercial financial sector? And there is hope. There are two major developments that have happened when it comes to financial inclusion. There is already an adaptation of an EU directive on basic accounts, which Kosovo regulator is already in the process of adaptation, offering low-cost, affordable, basic payment accounts to all citizens of Kosovo. And this is a joint, a common objective. Without good financial inclusion, we can forget about any cashless society, and this is where it starts. People need to have an account. Will a low-cost, accessible account solve the problem? No, because there are other macro factors, business environment, and above all, cultural factors that would be one of the other preconditions to foster cashless society. And if I talk about other stubborn barriers in Kosovo, first of all would be the high degree of informal economy. Digitalization means formalization. Automatically, it comes with less cash. If we talk about an estimation of up to 30% of the informal economy and over 90% of the transactions in the country being conducted in cash, of course there is resistance, and it should be a readiness to fight informal economy and tax evasion at a broader scale. Secondly, not to be underestimated, there is a very strong cultural factor that determines the readiness and the acceptance of the citizens to use cash or digital payments. And when we talk about cultural factors, I can very much talk about our own experiences at ProCredit, about the ways and the resistance we encounter when we talk about the deployment of the digital and solutions. When we transformed the bank 5-6 years ago into a direct bank, digital bank only, not everybody liked it. We had customers who screamed, we had customers who left, we had customers who found it difficult to adapt or to use technology, simply because there are very hard, stubborn habits, cultural aspects, traditions, that no matter how fancy or how advanced the technology is, sometimes culture is very difficult to fight. And it is a factor that it is very often underestimated, and I raise it because I find it very, very much important and needs to be taken into account. It needs all of us, each of us, here, there, changing the mindset and either embracing or not the technology. Another precondition is merchant acquiring solutions. And merchant acquiring solutions would mean merchant competition and economies of scale when we talk about the merchants. And here I have at least good news. From the supply perspective, we have seen increasingly readiness of the commercial financial banks and of merchants to adopt, accept innovative acquiring solutions. Nevertheless, it must be said that, again, roughly 80% of retail purchases in merchants that have already a good deployment of POS, point of sale terminals, still happens in cash. Cash still stubbornly dominates and persists shopping and payments. Nevertheless, the infrastructure is there, accessibility is there. Lately, the regulator has adopted another supportive piece of legislation that has already removed tariffs for every customer that purchases online in POSs of any financial provider. Plus, the regulator has already reduced the interchange fees that the commercial banks in Kosovo pay to Visa and MasterCard, with the only goal to increase accessibility and to reduce the cost of digital transactions to the merchants as well. And lastly, I have to say that the security and the reliability of the services, cashless infrastructure and the services that the providers offer matters very much if we want to move forward to a cashless society. These are more on a theoretical level, the ingredients that we want to see there. And let me start then with ProCredit. If in general I hear a lot of talk about the future of payments, the future of cashless. In ProCredit, we like to talk very much about the present, because the future is far away and sometimes things never happen. And we talk about the present and actions and a driver's seat we have already taken with concrete steps. And I have some illustrative examples about what we have done and some success stories into providing cashless, paperless, good examples. One of the examples and success story is sitting here with us on the right-hand side. I'll not talk more about it because I don't want to spoil what Mergim has to say, but it is one of our successful cooperations into being an enabler of a successful cashless business. The most recent example, which is very dear to our hearts and we all feel proud about it, it is the organization of a completely cashless and paperless music festival, which was Sunny Hill, held for 4 days in Pristina. It was the first time in this country, with such a context about the presence of cash, that a successful vision and cooperation of the organizer, of the Sunny Hill organizers, and of ProCredit Bank to dare and to organize a completely cashless event where for 4 nights, nearly 25 participants per night, times by 4 would mean 100, let's say, 1,000 people being there 24/7, consuming, paying, and simply going completely cashless and online. Was it possible? Yes, it was possible. Was it a success? Yes. The first day, regardless of how much we try to educate and to provide the right messages, most of the participants that neglected or were not prepared to go cashless, of course, suffered and screamed a little bit, but they survived, all of them. And then they enjoyed very much the last 3 days. And it happened, and we are very proud of what we have done. And why it happened? Because of one simple factor. When we talk about retail merchants and the success of the transition in a successful way of the cashless payments, there is one question I have to ask. When will the merchants stop accepting cash? They have the hardware infrastructure, they have the software infrastructure. Kosovo offers international credit cards, debit cards, Visa, MasterCard, with contactless features. It is already 2 or 3 years that the international card providers have mandates about the entire hardware infrastructure should be contactless and the cards are contactless to foster low-value payments going cashless. Still, our merchants accept 80% of their purchases in cash. If I would take some other successful examples in other countries, in Scandinavia, for example, this transformation was not made possible simply by the technology being there and offered by the providers, banks or fintech or other companies. But it starts with a merchant simply taking a decision and saying, no, from tomorrow, from today, I no longer accept cash. This is what Sunny Hill did. You give customers no other option. Technology by itself would not just solve the problem. Unless, as I said, we have to fight cultural, tradition, habits, mindsets of people that do not always embrace the technology in the manner that I already mentioned. And the other success story, of course, it is what ProCredit itself as a bank, now going on a larger scale, has already done and achieved in the last 5 years. ProCredit Bank, it is a unique example of a systemic, traditional bank, the second largest bank in Kosovo, deciding to go completely digital on its retail operations. I do not know any other systemic bank in any other country that has already done that. You can talk about greenfield, new challenger banks, neobanks, fintech. It's easy to establish something from scratch, new. But if you are a systemic bank inheriting 160,000 customers, retail customers, in a 90% cash country, and going digital, I mean, not thinking about going digital in the future, but going digital real time, live, by closing the traditional channels, by closing the branches completely, by downsizing the fleet of ATMs to a minimum required for customers, by investing heavily in the modern future means of payments, hardware, software, security features. We are the second largest POS network provider in the country. Since 2013, we have invested in e-commerce platforms, onboarded today more than 100 e-commerce merchants doing transactions. We are one of the first banks to offer e-commerce services even to the e-government of Kosovo. This is how we see the future. So if I talk about how ProCredit sees cashless society, not in the future, today, ProCredit very much sees a cashless society and lives a cashless society by the way it defined its business model, by the way it defined its distribution channels to customers, and by the way it designs and defines the relations and the ecosystems with customers and with the other providers. And before closing about ProCredit, I have to mention very briefly, leaving room for the other speakers. Are we there with regards to the digital ecosystem at least? Not yet. And what we are doing in order to fulfill the mission that we have already given to ourselves to being completely digital, cashless, and hopefully paperless. First of all, what needs to be done further on? Talking about the POS network. We in Kosovo today report over 13,000 POSs. This does not mean 13,000 merchants, because there are too many merchants that have a large number of POSs. What needs to be done and what we are working on in Kosovo, it is integration of the POS network system into one single network, plus offering or integrating smart POSs or soft POSs that would be very beneficial for the small merchants, for the small businesses, and for the low-cost payments. We are now working on deploying, hopefully by the end of the year, instant card payments, plus tap-of-phone services again for low-value payments for the other merchants as well. Then one important piece of legislation that needs to move forward has to do with the central bank. One barrier that we think that we need to overcome together with the regulator is moving into real-time payments for transactions below 10,000 euros. Today, these transactions in the clearing system of the central bank are not real-time, and without moving into a real-time instant payment module that integrates the commercial banks plus the fintech plus the merchants and the customers, would be very difficult to complete the whole mechanics of going digital and going cashless in the society. And this would be some of the projects that we would be heavily engaged together with the other stakeholders to make cashless a reality, hopefully soon.
I knew that moderating this panel will be hard. There are so many things to be said, so many things to be discussed, and challenges across the lines. And I'm happy to hear the bad and the good news from ProCredit and the challenges that we have in adoption. Yesterday, when we started discussion with Eugenio, what should we talk today about, it was a mess. There were so many things, so many new themes opened up. But as Eriola said, adoption in an environment like this, where cash is king and has been traditionally king, in one day, during 3-day festival, showed us that things can happen and that Gen Z and millennials are ready. So let's work with that. What about adoption? What about security, Eugenio? Tell us a bit what you have been doing. You have been implementing smartwatch payments for many years now. Is chip the next thing? What is happening?
Thank you very much, Driton, and thanks a lot for being here, for inviting me here. Indeed, this is a special year also for us. I mean, as I mentioned before, it's the 20th anniversary of a processing personalization business, which actually started here in Kosovo, and therefore this specific summit in Pristina is really fitting perfectly. Maybe answering your question about adoption, maybe let me come back a bit on the history, because I think there are patterns and trends which maybe can help us also to understand a bit the future. So I mean, back then, 20 years ago, why there was the need at all? I mean, that was a full 100% cash society, right? There was no ATMs, there was no cards, there was actually nothing. So there was a specific anyhow need that we needed to address. So as the bank, they needed to address, and we were there for supporting them. And the need was, first of all, the basic one. So how to move out the people from the queue, right, and bring them basically to serve them 24/7, right? We saw also in the previous presentation, right, that to provide the additional service 24/7 was the first need. And that was the ATM, put in the first ATM, first local cards that was addressing. Which of course, at the end, the queue didn't solve the problem, because now they were queuing in the ATM, right? They were not queuing in the branch. And therefore there, of course, is the starting of the beginning to create an ecosystem. So put the first POS, and then the users, they understood the benefits not to spend time in the queue, and they went finally to utilize also the cards. And then there was other needs, of course, that were developing. And now people wanted to travel, they wanted to access their funds. And therefore there we went into, having a payment system, so Visa branded cards, MasterCard branded cards, so that allowed this interoperability even outside of the country. And in 2012, actually, we were the first to offer the first e-commerce. 2012, we talk about the first e-commerce in the country. So definitely technology is there, was already there. Now the question here, how to speed up actually this journey about towards the cashless society. I mean, I think that to reflect is about, who is our end user, right? And as you mentioned, I mean, we are now in especially here in Kosovo, as a growing young society. We are talking about millennials. I mean, we have colleagues in our office. We are picking up learning languages by watching telenovelas, and now YouTube's also, and so on and so forth. So we have this generation which have been really born with the mobile, and so we have, whenever we look at products, we have to not to think about us as users per se, but but it's about them. It's about how they will use actually these services. And that is where I think is the first point of where that we can help to understand how we can speed up that adoption a bit more. So more concretely, for example, nowadays this new generation, Gen Z or millennials, it's about also timing. They want everything fast. We are living in a fast society, right? And that means that also starting from a card, which we personalize also here, and we can be having a good time to market, but ultimately we are also issuing digital cards, instant issue digital cards, because that is, immediately you can have access to your funds, and you can already start to transact. So it's about an ecosystem, it's a digital ecosystem, and that is where we are contributing to also build up. And what is this ecosystem about? So first of all, it's about, as I said, also we heard from before, so the onboarding of the customers, right, also digitally, and that is one side. The second part is we need to allow them to access their funds and transact already. So we have been working, and you mentioned about the wearables, but more concretely also here in Kosovo about NFC, so wallets, so the possibility actually to pay with your mobile, right? And in the region here, I mean, more recently, last month, also we went live in Serbia with Google Pay, together with MasterCard, together with other local banks. So there are definitely the payments enabling on mobile to transact is a first step, if you want to build up this ecosystem. And the second is, of course, the digital issuance, and to create all the different collateral features that are required in the moment. The clients are not anymore going to the branch, but they're staying at home. From the basic of delivery of the PIN in a secure way, to, as I said, access to generate these card information a bit more virtually. And that's not the end, because then once it's about the two sides of the story. Like it takes two to tango, right? So we have the issuing side, you have the acquiring side, and then differently from maybe 20 years ago now, what is the new demand is also that these digital channels, digital cards, needs also to be accepted, right? And as Eriola commented on the retail network, I mean, there is already good progress, and all the terminals are already contactless. And now what we are working on is also to make ATMs contactless, right? So that we can still provide that service. And even if it sounds a bit counterintuitive about the cashless, about the ATMs, but still, again, so cashless is on the bank side. Basically, they don't manage the cash anymore. They are managed. The machine are basically managing the process. So this ecosystem on the acquiring side is ATM cashless, and then of course the other opposite of the stream is the e-commerce, right? So the more virtual, let's say, solution. And in between, yeah, we are indeed exploring a solution with the tap on phone, which are pretty much trying to address another needs. That is, they need maybe from the bank side to reduce also the total cost of ownership, and to basically spread the solution a bit, to scale the solution in a faster way with less cost, right? So overall, I think that there are good ideas about the wearables that you mentioned. Indeed, also, I think these are, I mean, I'm personally daily users of it. I'm hardly taking my cards out of the wallet. So, and I think that in order to, when we talk about adoption, of course, we have to talk about the security of the solution, right? And since the solution needed to be trusted, needed to work, right? And so, and as it was mentioned also in the previous panel, the customer experience is vital. Because, I mean, if there is too much friction when performing, payments in other means than cash, then of course the cash will be the fallback solution always, right? Now, about the security of the latest technology, so payments, mobile payments, wearable, etc. I mean, there is the industry move very fast in the years, and there is this concept of tokenization, which means nothing else that all the sensitive information that are in the cards and so on and so forth, they are tokenized. So there is basically a string of numbers which are not really meaningful per se, but which will be mapped into the payment system servers to the proper information which is required to perform the transaction. And the same tokenization is applicable also in the e-commerce industry with the card on file, for example, so where we don't store the information of the clients over there, but we tokenize it, right? So, I mean, technology is there for supporting this transition, and we as a provider or solution provider, definitely we are here for supporting, in the process. And what I want to add about the adoption still is the fact that, I mean, actually I'm quite positive, and I believe that a lot of work in the 20 years was done. Of course, maybe the figures, they are not looking very sexy on that side. But on the other note, I have to say that, it's like a bit a compound effect, right? So, I mean, every step ahead that we are doing will have then an exponential effect. And sooner or later, I think we are getting on the beginning of this curve, considering the new population, the new generation which is coming up, which is very much more prone to utilize more digital services, and of course always to bringing up the security on the same level, right? So yeah, I think the ball is rolling, and now we need just to support the process, and yeah, new paradigma are coming in to understand really the customer needs, and especially of this new generation.
Let me complement one fact for the audience, actually. Cards would remain the most important means of payments for in-store purchases and for online purchases. And there is no doubt about that. When we talk about wallets, let me clarify where do we stand for Kosovo. It is already not allowed from Apple Pay and from GPay to offer legally to integrate wallets payment services for Kosovo, Albania, even North Macedonia, because as a country you need to undergo a legal due diligence, and you need to be allowed by these large providers. This is why we cannot offer regardless of our readiness of technology to do that. Instead, we of course find a shortcut. We have NFC integrated wallets in our mobile application, but this is not Apple Pay, this is not GPay. Nevertheless, mobile payments today are more P2P. They are not used for purchases very much, not even in the most advanced countries. They would substitute part of the low-cost domestic payments, P2P payments, and other sorts of transactions that today are not captured under the shopping and retail payments module, for the sake of the clarification.
Thank you, Eriola, very much for the clarification. Thank you, Eugenio. That's the reason why we are so resilient. No visas, no Apple Pay, no Google Pay, banning crypto, banning that and this, but we still survive. Lots of electricity, thanks God, so we are good on that. But to comment on what Eugenio was saying, and previously, Eriola, my daughter started her studies in Prague just recently. I was there 2 weeks ago. So a young student having no personal account in Kosovo, because that is not something that you can offer easily to somebody who is a teenager. You have to take some shortcuts and bypasses. Suddenly, after Sunny Hill, landed in Prague and no cash, not even card in a sense, because it's virtual, it's on the phone, Apple Pay, Google Pay. She doesn't care. She doesn't want to know about cash. In the past, she would ask me, how does that machine works where you put something and you get the money? Nowadays, she doesn't care. She doesn't want to. But it's very much truly reliant on the merchants as well. Fabian, you have been printing cash for so many years. You are still printing cash and you are saying it will not die. So GND, founded in 1852 as a banknote printer, which we are still for many, many countries, you are doing still
Yes.
as well. But on the other hand, very active in non-cash areas, payment card manufacturer, new exciting manners such as central bank, digital currency. I think that is very important to discuss, the digital currency. So what do you think? Do we really have a cashless society? Which properties has cash and which are lacking there? How can we overcome the shortcoming of cash? And what about this digital currency thing?
Thank you. So first of all, I would put a question tag on the title of this panel. There is no cashless society, and I may say so in a balanced way as a manufacturer, which serves both sides. It's very well that there is no cashless society for several reasons. Because first of all, we think that cash is and is to stay as the most democratic means of payment. Everybody can access cash at no cost, at no personal cost. It's issued by a central bank, and there's no cost to you as a user. If you want to get cash out of your ATM, if you can use it, out of your cash in store, cash in shop, wherever you use to get your cash from. Secondly, it's the only means of payment which is legal tender, and this is not just a kind of intellectual bubble. It is universally accepted. Wherever you go, it is accepted, and there is no fee for the merchant, for example, that he has to pay to whatever society that provides his infrastructure. There's another important aspect of cash, which is anonymity. And I would do a very positive connotation with anonymity, because in many cases I have no interest as an individual that the merchant knows who I am as long as he gets his money, which is very legitimate. And I have no interest, for example, if I buy a birthday present for my wife, that she sees on my credit card receipt what I have bought and why I bought it and how much I paid. For her, it only matters there's a birthday present. So anonymity. And there's also a very important aspect, which is the, can I say, pedagogic, or educational, this is better, educational aspect of cash. It is physical. So if you get a piece of cash, you hold it, you get it in your wallet, and if there is less cash, you need to think what to do. Did I spend too much? Should I spend less? Should I earn a little bit more to have still cash in my wallet? And this is very important for kids, because if you pay contactless or with your card or whatever, it's just a blip at the POS, just a blip. But then at the end of the month, you will see on your payment account, this blip means something. So for learning how to use your income, how to spend it, it is very important to have this kind of physical, haptical aspect of cash. And this is not something I say only as a manufacturer. At the moment, if you see the statistics of the Euro system, there are 82.2 billion banknotes out there. 4 trillion euro in the Euro system. So in the Euro system is not really correct. We estimate that about 1/3 are outside the Euro group, but this is a considerable number. And it's not shrinking, not at all. If you see the statistics of the European Central Bank, cash is rising. Every year it's rising, and it's of course less rising in the Nordic states, more rising in other states that have other cultural habits. And why is it rising? Because out of resilience, of course. During Corona, for example, many people stocked cash at home. Even many companies stocked cash just to be resilient. If anything happens, they wanted to have the possibility to facilitate their daily payments. And secondly, out of this resilience, we need to notice, and this is clear, the nature of why I hold cash has changed. Today, in most of Europe, the holding cash is less the question of doing transactions, maybe for small amounts of money, but it's rather the question of, well, having a value at home, something in case if something happens. So statistically, I think every German has 1,300 something euro under his pillow. So check your pillow if there's something hidden. I didn't find it at home, but so this is what the statistics say. And this is why my statement would be we need that freedom of choice. From a user or customer-centric view, I wouldn't like to force my user into, or my customer into using this or that. I do it like we are here in a hotel, so let's compare it with a hotel buffet in the morning. He needs to have the full choice. If he pays cash or cashless, whatever, I don't care, as long as he has the possibility to choose and take what he needs according to his current situation. And sometimes, I mean, you know it from yourself, sometimes you need cash to pay, sometimes you want to pay by card, whatever. But it is important to maintain this infrastructure. And now, second point, you mentioned, what is the big advantage of cash? Well, it's physical. And for have a digitally, let's say, a society that is fully comprehensive, that includes even those that don't have a bank account, what can you do? Now, the idea would be to translate cash into the digital world. And this is not just about having a wallet or on your wrist. The idea is when you're talking about central bank digital currencies, or in Europe, we are talking about the digital euro, issued by a central bank as it is today. So it is a obligation of the central bank and not the obligation of a private bank. Well, that's not some kind of intellectual game. It's very important. It's not a kind of loan or whatever that is given. It's a central bank currency, but in a digital form. And this is something that 86% of all central banks, according to the Bank of International Settlements, 86% of all central banks are thinking about and actually practicing the introduction of a central bank digital currency. You have read that the Euro system is thinking about it, and you have maybe seen some implementations. Interestingly, the first central banks that introduced CBDCs were very small countries. I remember reading of I think it was the Bahamas that introduced the sandwich dollar at the time 3 years ago or something. But now let's say, bigger countries are going into that as well. Our company has started first projects live, pilot projects with central bank digital currencies in countries such as Ghana and Southeast Asia and others. But the idea behind remains the same. Offer the whole buffet, offer the whole menu, and have a complementary choice between cash, non-cash, in whatever form, wherever you carry that, in your wallet, on your arm, as a key fob, whatever. This is the idea, and we do not see cash disappear. It takes another mode of use. And if we go back to the example that you have mentioned, the Swedish example that went on their local Swish system, so the electronic system, they have meanwhile, let's say, the pendulum has swung back a little bit. Why? Because the central bank has noticed that if you want to steer the cash cycle, you actually need to have cash. And the sheer amount of cash which is out there in the cash cycle is also something that allows the central bank to adapt the macroeconomic parameters. So this has gone back a little bit, and we're now, I think we're going into a new reality where several means of payment, according to the use case, simply coexist. But for our company, I'm very confident that cash is not going to disappear in the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Fabian, thank you very much. Some 30 years ago in University of Oslo, I asked for another pillow, and they said, why? I said, we have really big pillows back home, and they had very thin pillows. Now I get the point why it happened and why it's like that. This wife thing, Fabian, is a bit scary, you know? Not knowing what she is spending and where she is spending is not a good news for us. My wife, an engineerly trained, digitally savvy person, didn't buy a single thing online before COVID. And then this virus changed something in her mindset. What happened, Mergim? What happened? Start with COVID and let us know what is happening in e-commerce.
Yeah, thank you. Before we start, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's so nice to know Fabian. When I was a kid, I always wanted to know, how do you print money? I think we should grab a coffee. And I also think cash is king, but I just came from the States, and one particular Starbucks did not accept any cash. So I think that's changing, but a different topic. So COVID. I think the topic is cashless society and e-commerce, and I'm going to focus more, if it's okay, because that's also the topic, on e-commerce and how the digital, its impact in the society, and how do we see this improvement going forward. I think that's very critical, because cashless is one attribute or one output of that advancement in the society and the digital space, and e-commerce is also one of the parameters of it. And I think it may be helpful to think in a certain way or a certain model or a certain framework of how we look at this. The first thing that we would look has 3 points. One is properties or attributes of this digitalization and the society. By properties or attributes, what I mean is cashless is one piece. Internet penetration is one piece. Percent of online sales as the total percent of the total retail is another piece. Segmentation of the of products, whether you're talking groceries, whether you're talking technical electronics, it's another. So in that perspective, all of this is not also binary. It's not whether it exists or not. It's not a matter are we cashless or not, but it's a matter how much are we and where are we going and where we were before in the past. It's not a matter of are we selling or not online. It's what's the total percent of online sales as a percent of total retail. So this brings me to point B, which is the value of each of these attributes is not 0 and 1, it's some sort of a scale or a range. And all of this, and if we have math people here, you can imagine on x-axis you have all of these properties, and on the y-axis you have the scale of each of these properties. And all of this makes sense in one point in time, but to make it more meaningful, I think you have to look at the time dimension. The time dimension is what was cashless a year ago, 2 years ago, and where are we going 10 years after this? What was the grocery sales on retail versus online before and after COVID? So now you can add another dimension in it, and it becomes a time series. And I think only with this framework are we able to actually analyze and answer the questions where we stand today with the society and how we're moving forward. Otherwise, if we say, are we going to be cashless? Well, it depends. It really depends. Because, and I'll give you concrete examples. You have, it was mentioned, the Sunny Hill Festival, but also in our e-commerce, 80% or 20% it's cashless. The rest is not. It's improving, but it's not. But guess what? We have another service, travel. You can buy bus tickets. It's 100% cashless. It's all credit cards. Do people like more to pay for bus tickets online with a card versus for a laptop? Well, no, because we don't provide cash option. So it really, the answer, are we cashless or not, it depends on a lot of parameters which you have to take into consideration in there. And in this respect, often when we look at, we come to product dilemma, right? We come up with nice features to have, we think they are, we fall in love with it. Well, we should look at, are they adding any value? Like earlier was mentioned, comfort of e-commerce. I think comfort, it depends. In the United States, again, I just came from the States in Detroit, and in one particular town was very well spread, so you would need half hour to an hour to go almost anywhere. Comfort in that city, purchasing online, it's much more valuable, added value than comfort to purchase groceries in Pristina, because you have grocery shops everywhere. So comfort by itself as a feature does not necessarily mean growth of e-commerce or cashless or digital society. It really means in what circumstances, what segment, what geo, what product, right? Or another equivalent example, it's more comforting to play FIFA, football, PlayStation at home, but it doesn't necessarily increase the penetration of football playing in the field. So it really depends on a lot of these parameters. Now, having said all of this, I think looking at where we stand today, it's important to relate to the region. So this particular region, not just Kosovo, Western Balkans in particular, have been neglected by the global tech, especially in digitalization process, a lot. You were saying earlier, we're resilient, we have grit, we know how to survive, but so far we're doing well. It reminded me of the joke when somebody was falling off a building and somewhere in the middle, floor 10, some people are asking that person, are you okay? How are you doing? He goes, I'm doing great. So I think there is a limit on the grit, right? So you don't have Uber, you don't have a lot of payment solutions. We have local banks who are doing a great job, by the way, and we are very, very grateful to be working in particular with Pro Credit and new features now, card on file. But card on file, we're happy to have it now. Amazon had it 20 plus years ago, one click buy, right? So, you know, we're talking about cashless and moving things forward, but it depends. So in today's society, the market has been neglected. And if you look at Kosovo in itself, it's small market in terms of retail. And one rule of thumb to see how big the market is, and this is very high level numbers, but usually it seems that 20 to 30% of the GDP of a country is retail. Usually, that seems to be a trend, depending on the development of the market. And if you see that 1 to 20%, depending on what country, of that total retail goes to e-commerce. So Kosovo, it's about 1 to 3% now. It's growing, but it's there. United States is 18, 19, 20% now post-COVID, expected to go to 25% of total retail to go through e-commerce by 2025, 26. Czech Republic is one of the most advanced markets in the East Europe. It's about 19%. So if you look at this formula now, you can see that in terms of e-commerce and the potential for cashless, Kosovo in itself, it's small, but together with Albania and North Macedonia, it's pretty big. But all of them together, it's still smaller than Serbia. And then add Serbia to it, it's pretty big. But then all of them together with Serbia, it's smaller than Bulgaria. I've given this example in the past if somebody has heard it. And then add Bulgaria to this, and all of this is big, but it's still smaller than Greece on its own. Add Greece to this, it's still big, but it's still smaller than Poland. Add Poland, it's still smaller than Germany. So you can see this, again, math people, Fibonacci numbers growing. So the market is here. It's not that it's not here, but I think it needs to move on further in terms of attention. And in terms of cashless, I will close with this, but it reminded me as we were talking here, and I was being enlightened with a lot of information provided by the previous speakers. I think it reminded me of the question, the century-old question, does the art influence reality or reality influences art? And I think they work hand in hand. Unfortunately, in our market, society, being the art piece in this example, it's much more ready than we are. I think we are falling behind, the service providers, the merchants or the banks, or we are falling behind in providing those services. I think the society is ready to use one-click buy. I think the society is ready to do that if you somehow make it available to them. I think we are a little bit more. I'm not saying because we don't know how, or we don't have the resources nor the capacity. It's exactly because of the restrictions that were mentioned earlier for the legal perspective, from the qualification of the countries, from these things that are keeping us behind. I think Kosovo in particular, I think it's ahead than Albania, equivalent to North Macedonia, will be able to go maybe 50+% cashless, not all of it, and I agree, if we are able to react a little bit further and faster with them. Us as a merchant, until recently, we were pushing more cash. We were providing incentives for the customer to pay more cash because the cost of cash management was lower than the cost of non-cash. Now it's changing with different options that we have. But at the same time, you have to provide options to the client. So why don't we provide it in the bus, and we say only a credit card with bus, and why do we provide e-commerce? It's because we don't have competition there. And they have to buy it if they need it. In here, if a supermarket allows you to pay only with credit card, they're going to go to the next one. So merchant can push certain things up to a certain degree, but I don't think they can push it that far away because it really depends on competition that goes around it. So, but we are headed towards a cashless. I don't know if it's going to be 100%, but I think it will be more decentralized. And that decentralization, as you were speaking, Fabian, most of those advantages of cash as a king, decentralized system provides. I think that's where we had it. Could be private sector, could be central bank. I'm not in particular suggesting how it should be, but I think crypto should be the way to go. You know how much we sell with crypto today in Giraffa? 0, because we don't accept it. I think we could sell more than 10% if we accept based on some analysis, but we can't, right? Because it's blocked. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mergim. Such a great insight. And still full house. There is food on the corner, but I think that you have questions to the panel. Please, Fabian, before the questions are posed.
Yeah, just one aspect that we haven't touched yet. So sustainability. When you just mentioned cryptocurrencies, so all this Ethereum, Bitcoin, whatever thing. Think of the energy it needs to generate this kind of value, and I would say value in, well, hyphenated a little bit, because what is it? It is a kind of highly speculative, transactional item, whatever, but it is no currency because it's neither a store of value, it's not a unit of account. So what is it? And then we have to compare from a sustainability point of view, which means of payment is also the most eco-friendly, because this is something we need to care about if we're talking about climate change and so on. So it can be a card, which is, we were talking about that beforehand, a card which is made out of ocean plastic, which some manufacturers, including us, produce. So take the garbage out of the oceans, clean it up, make a card out of that. It can be a banknote, which is made, by the way, out of garbage. It's made out of cotton fibers, which are no longer used for your shirts, but just falling out of the machines. This is what a banknote comes from. And I guess it's also an aspect we need to consider if we want to behave in a green, environmentally friendly way.
Thank you, Fabian. So the floor is yours. If there are any questions from the audience. If not, dear panelists, thank you very much for a great discussion, short time, being late a bit, but hope to see and hear from you again next time. I believe in cashless society, but I understood a bit of that we still have to wait for some sort of the cashless society. Thank you very much, and thank you to you as well being part of this.